Welcome to the Youth Voice, a podcast giving young people a voice in politics across the island of Ireland. So today we're joined by Aontú leader and TD for Meath West, Peadar Toibín. So
hello
welcome
there.
to the show. So I suppose we'll get straight in. Aontú, fairly new party. You know, a lot of it's different for a lot of people. We're kind of getting used to, what the party means, what the party stands for. So where do you see Aontú in, I suppose, 5 years' time? What is the goal in your eyes for Aontú?
Okay, well, Aontú is a brand new party, as you say. Aontú was founded in January 2019. So we're not even 3 years old yet. If we were a child, we'd be waddling around the place as such. We have about 1,000 members from across the 32 counties. We have 6 elected reps from Derry to Wexford, including myself and County Meath. And we have about 60 functioning common. The commons are our clubs, if you like, where people gather to work on local issues and immerse themselves in campaigns locally. And we've got about 50,000 votes in the last election, which actually put us ahead of people before profit, which is impressive. And we're polling currently now about 4%, between 2 and 4% in the different polls that are happening in the south. And I think in the north, in the last poll, was the first time that we appeared in that. So our objective as a political party, I suppose, is a number of folds. In the north of Ireland, we're fiercely frustrated with the fact that Stormont is not working for people. That Stormont is, in many ways, is a forced marriage. But it's a situation where political parties are not managing to provide for people. So Stormont is broken. And here we are now with regards to protocol. We have the DUP are threatening to pull out of Stormont. We think as a political party that it's ridiculous that anybody should be able to pull the Stormont down whatsoever. We're a political party that actually gathers from a lot of different backgrounds. Most of our members are probably not from any political party, but we have a big chunk of former Fianna Fáilers, a big chunk of former Sinn Féiners, and many people from the SDLP. And these are people, I suppose, who are just angry at the fact that the leadership of those political parties no longer represents the core values that those political parties state that they have. And they feel that those political parties have become very mainstream, have become very establishment. And, in many ways, that those political parties are sticking the finger in the air to find out which way the wind is blowing. And we're trying to be different. We're trying to be a grassroots movement made up of people who can be the leadership of Aontú, and we won't go with the wind. We'll stand for core values that we have and make sure that we have a backbone, and that's really important in politics, I think, because if everybody is simply going with the flow or going with the wind, then you have a situation whereby there's no foundations, there's no common sense, there's no anchor with regards what's right or what's wrong or what's important. We are a Republican party, but unlike Sinn Féin, we seek the unity of Ireland, but we also seek the unity of the people of Ireland. So our republicanism is about Wolfe Tone and his idea of republicanism, which was about unity of Catholic, Protestant, and dissenter. So we favour a pluralist Ireland, where everybody can be who they want to be to the full extent, and people can live in harmony with each other in that regards. We're different from, let's say, the SDLP and Sinn Féin, is that we're the only political party now in the north of Ireland, from a nationalist perspective, who believe that everybody should have the right to life. But neither Sinn Féin nor the SDLP leadership espouse that objective anymore. We oppose any level of discrimination against any level of human being. So in that way, we're different to the SDLP and Sinn Féin as well. We are a party of, I would say, the economic centre left, in that we want to have a prosperous country. People who work hard should, and who invest time and energy and money and in education, etc. They should be able to do well for themselves. They should be able to be prosperous. But we need to make sure that there is a safety net under people in terms of housing, healthcare, education, and transportation as well. We're a party that's different from the SDLP and Sinn Féin in many ways, in that we believe in spatial balance. In many ways in the north of Ireland, we've seen west of the Bands suffer radically with regards to jobs and infrastructure. Indeed, the whole Derry area has been, a region that's just been forgotten about by the establishment political parties. So that's where we stand. We have our Ardesh coming up on the 23rd of October. It will be the first Ardesh in the south of Ireland for a long period of time in person. And we'll actually have a dinner dance on that night. It'll be the first dinner dance in the south, I'd say, in about 2 years. So it'll be great fun.
Can't be the dinner dance. But I suppose one of the big things that I was, because I put out on my social medias last night, wanting to know what people wanted to hear and what they wanted me to ask. And one of the big things that I came across was, because we're obviously a youth-focused podcast, is the idea that young people seem to be more socially left-wing, and particularly on abortion, gay marriage, kind of all of the kind of world of social issues, and some very controversial topics, I suppose you could say. And those were the big issues that was kind of being hit on every time, because I think with most young people, they seem to be a lot more left-wing. So you're kind of getting there with the economic side, but the social side be slightly more conservative. And what young people were kind of wondering was, are you able to kind of bring those young people in, and what is the plan for kind of getting the young vote? Because while they're the young people of today, they're the voters of tomorrow, I suppose.
Yeah, well, there's two things there. First of all, many left-wing political parties around the world have, let's say, prioritized woke politics to a certain extent and forgotten about the bread and butter issues. And we've actually seen many left-wing parties actually see their votes plummet over the last number of years in relation to this. So like the Democrats in the States, the Labour Party in England, and different parties in France and the rest of Europe. And I actually think that many people, when it comes down to it, they vote with their wallets. Students vote on whether or not they can get access to education and how much that education is going to cost them. Whether they can actually get accommodation is really important, for example, for young people. And right now we have an accommodation crisis happening north and south, and people can't pay the rents for those. And we actually find that many people who might have slightly different views on our social policy to us actually are seeing us more active, more engaged, and more effective on those bread and butter issues, and actually will give us a vote on the basis of that anyways. The second thing I would say is that, I don't think you should pigeonhole a section of society in relation to particular views. Absolutely, there's no doubt that young people are probably more, in general, liberal on social policies than their parents are. But there's a sizable chunk of young people who, for example, would believe that everybody should have the right to life. Who would oppose the prevailing wind in relation to deleting the right to life for a certain section of humanity. There would be, many people who are younger who would, agree with us that we should protect the most vulnerable in relation to society. And also, we're probably a little bit different than some parties that find themselves on the right, because our objective to protect the most vulnerable doesn't stop at birth. It actually continues. We're probably the party that's most active currently, north and south, on issues such as education, on issues such as on housing, on issues such as the working and healthcare. Our objective to protect the most vulnerable is for the whole life. As such, and that's important. So, and to be honest, we have an Ogra Aontú. It's a significant chunk of our membership, and we have many people who are joining us in that. And one of the things that I think there's a danger in modern society is there is this idea that genders or races or age groups are uniform in their views, and that's just not true. Actually, there's a diversity of opinion in all of those things. And I think it's very important that, younger people who have similar views to myself should feel confident and to be able to articulate those views. People shouldn't, people often tell me that there's a chilling effect on debate. And I'll give an example. Ogra Sinn Féin had a debate in Galway University a couple of years ago for women in politics. And they sent an invite to the Aontú representative in Galway to attend. And then when they found out that she was pro-life, they told her to get stuffed and said that she couldn't attend. And it seems to me like people sometimes who dress up in diversity the most, who say that, you know, we welcome this new diverse Ireland, say, well, only if it agrees with us. And actually the Sinn Féin Ógra member who invited the Aontú representative to that Women in Politics event was actually suspended by Ógra Sinn Féin for having the temerity to have an inclusive and diverse debate. And, you know, there's one thing I will say is that many people would tell me that there's a chilling effect nearly at the moment from people being able to articulate their strongly held views. And I would always say that if this democracy goes down the route of people not being able to articulate their views, that's a significant threat to the health of this democracy. Because it's only when we have your views or my views and other views competing with each other openly and respectfully that we're likely to actually achieve you know, a positive and a good solution. So for example, in the south of Ireland, we've had probably the most restrictive COVID policies in the whole of Europe. We had, for the first quarter of this year, no homes built. The only country in Europe where homes were stopped being built, and the country with the highest housing crisis in the country, in Europe. We spent, you know, double the European average on COVID-related costs because of our restrictions. We were amongst North Korea and Saudi Arabia in banning public religious practice, which is an incredible thing. No other country except for those three did that. And one of the reasons was because most of the opposition in the South went to sleep on their beanbags during this time. You know, the opposition's job is to, you know, thoroughly and robustly challenge the establishment. And for sure, we believe that COVID is real illness. It's like, we're not arguing that. And for sure, there needs to be protections and restrictions. But what we were just simply saying is that Ireland went on an extreme outlier path. And part of that reason was because there's this culture happening in Ireland where that deletion of robust disagreement, respectful disagreement, is happening, and that's a danger. And that's one of the reasons I think people are flocking to Aontú, because they see us as, you know, being a challenge to that uniformity, that lack of diversity, but they see us doing it in a reasonable and respectful way too.
Absolutely. I suppose another kind of thing I want to touch on is tuition fees. I know you mentioned the accommodation crisis. It's a big thing. I'm seeing all of my friends kind of being hit by it. You know, I'm not in university next year, and it's kind of, where can I afford to go just off of living? But tuition fees is also a big thing. You know, I think we're paying £4,000 a year up here. That's what, you know, I'll be paying next year for 4 years or so. And I know there is costs down south. I know it isn't a tuition fee, but there is a payment of some sort. I can't remember the name of it. So
registration fee, yeah.
That's what it was. And is I suppose free third level or higher level education something that your party would back?
There's a couple of things there, right? And first of all, the first point I'm going to make, I don't believe there's enough analysis on it at all. So Stormont is doing a phenomenally poor job in relation to providing accommodation, to providing education for free, etc. But because all the establishment parties are actually in the one executive, nobody points a finger, nobody calls each other out, nobody questions it. And that's, again, a big worry, just even for the health of democracy in the north of Ireland, because you need a political party to be able to say what's what and to challenge, you know, the government. And because everybody's in government nearly in the north, that is simply not happening. And, you know, the government in the north has actually been cutting back severely in a large number of public expenditure areas. Secondly, we in Aontú are massive proponents of free education. And the reason being is because education is probably one of the most important things that can allow for each individual to reach their full potential. Secondly, it's the great leveler. So, you know, if you have free education, it means that a person from a working class background will have the same access to decent education as a person from a very privileged background, so that the next generation doesn't have to reflect the wealth distribution infrastructure that existed in the previous generation. So, you know, the idea that you would actually have a kind of a gate at the universities in Ireland's north and south, which basically says, come in here, guys, if you've got the money, get stuffed if if you don't. That's absolutely wrong. And the second thing here happens is that, many students find themselves not in the typical family situation. Like, I would know students whose parents have passed away. I know students who are actually the carers for their parents. Or I would know students who maybe are at odds with their parents. So the relationship is not in a healthy way. And all of these individuals should not have to be dependent upon the financial ability of their parents to access education. So we would disagree wholeheartedly with Sinn Féin, the SDLP, DUP and UUP and Alliance in relation to the fee system in the north of Ireland. We want to see a free education system paid through taxation, on the basis that the people who can afford to pay a little bit more pay a little bit more. A progressive taxation system is the objective of ourselves.
Another thing I want to touch on is, there's possibly, I know it'll probably be quite a few years off yet, but we're always in an election cycle. We came very close to possibly seeing, the bringing down of the government a couple of weeks ago. There's always talks of elections. So say, Aontú do go into government, say, there is a massive Aontú landslide. I know it is, it's possibly not quite the next election, but, you go into coalition or something like that happens. What are the big issues that, that Aontú and you want to you want to tackle, I suppose?
Okay, so unity is a big issue. Irish unity is a big issue for Aontú, and we believe that we are probably the most practical United Ireland party in the country. So, while Sinn Féin jump up and down and protest, etc., about the issue, it's kind of interesting that they have been going to London recently a lot and asking London to enforce legislation on the north of Ireland, which is really unusual, right? Because for 200 years, Republicans have gone to London and told them they have no rights to legislate for any part of Ireland. And here we have Michelle O'Neill and Michelle Gildernew and Mary Lou MacDonald actually regularly campaigning in Westminster for Westminster to impose legislation, often against the wishes of the people of the north of Ireland. So, one of the things, for example, we created a bill just recently which would give citizens in the north a vote in the presidential elections on an annual basis, or every single election cycle, which I think would be a democratic empowerment of citizens in the north. We've also created a bill which has passed the first stage in the Dáil, which would give MPs in the north of Ireland a right to be able to sit in the Dáil, ask questions, articulate views, represent their people. Now, obviously, it'll be another step with regards to votes or budgets, etc. But we want to see that happen as well. I actually had an opportunity a couple of years ago to write an economic plan for North and South. Believe it or not, it was the first All-Ireland economy research document carried out by Leinster House since partition. I interviewed hundreds of people in relation to that North and South, from all backgrounds, nationalists and unionists and in the middle backgrounds. And it was funny, most people that I spoke to in the North agreed that if we plan together, if we fund together, and if we deliver services together, they will simply be better services. And so, that's in a way that even taking out the perceived constitutional threat, let's just look at the practical ways of improving the standard of living amongst most people. I've often seen the border as a wall with 1,000 blocks, and each block stands for something real in someone's life. So maybe it's third level fees, one block. Maybe another block is third level education, or maybe another block is the education for a primary school or secondary school, or another one is an All-Ireland ambulance service, or another one is an All-Ireland policing service, or another one is an All-Ireland air ambulance service, or another one is an All-Ireland cancer service. All of these particular individuals, people would say, let's make them more efficient and let's make them roll out and have a better effect on people. So let's just focus and start working on each one of those issues. Every time we get one of those right, it would improve the lives of people, but it would also take a block down from the border. It would make that border lower, and it would mean that on that sunny day when there is Irish unity, and it would be easier to make that transition towards unity. It wouldn't be as scary potentially for people from a unionist background, because a lot of those issues would have been resolved initially. So that's one of our major projects, is to start on the block by block dismantling of the differences that exist north and south. For us, obviously, we want to create a society which is, I suppose, more respectful and more pluralist in relation to differences of views. And there's a big debate down here in the south of Ireland around the president not attending the commemoration for the partition of Ireland. And, you know, one of the mistakes I think that's happening north and south around reconciliation is that reconciliation is thought to be each other, you know, us wearing each other's clothes. You know, so Sinn Féin have started talking about the poppy and the Commonwealth and all of these things in recent times. But I don't have to wear your clothes, Dermot, to be able to be your friend or to coexist politically with you, or even to get on well with you. And actually, in a pluralist society, we can have radically different views or, you know, opinions about how the country should be run, but we can all coexist in that pluralist and diverse society. And, you know, one of the things I suppose our engagement in that debate made a breakthrough was people kind of said, yeah, you know, Southerners don't have to attend a commemoration which commemorates or celebrates partition. Unionists don't have to go to a 1916 Rising commemoration. You know, we shouldn't be forcing each other to be each other. We should actually just say, okay, we respect your differences and your differences are great. And let's just live with those in partnership, find common ground where we can and build a new Ireland in that manner. So I think north and south, that's a job of work. Another project that is very important to Aontú is we want to see the infrastructure in the island of Ireland start to mesh together. The idea that there isn't a road up to Derry at this stage that can accommodate fast travel is bonkers. The idea there isn't a rail line up to the northwest of Ireland is absolutely bonkers. You know, the idea that we are still planning our health service on the island of Ireland back to back from each other is radically problematic. It costs more and it reduces the quality of service to people. So that's one of the issues that we want to radically focus on, and all Ireland infrastructural development that would improve Ireland. So they would be our objectives. With regards to, let's say, issues such as the human rights to life, we want to, first of all, make sure that every mother in the country, you know, has the confidence to be able to raise their child to its full potential without any fear economically. When there was the 8th committee in the South was discussing the issue of abortion in the South, it found out that over 2/3 of women who have abortions because of economic reasons. In the south of Ireland and in the north of Ireland, who are homeless, who are pregnant. You know, the idea that we have these, in many ways, pro-choice parties, both in the north and the south, you know, saying that women have a choice. Women don't have a choice in many, but they feel they don't have a choice because of the economic circumstances that these so-called pro-choice parties are forcing them into. And we want a progressive attitudes. We want to make sure that every single woman in the country has the economic confidence to be able to raise their child to their full potential. That alone could actually have the effect of saving 60, you know, or 70% of children whose lives are currently ended through abortion on an annual basis.
That is brilliant. I think we'll wrap it up there. Thank you so much for coming on. It was great to get talking to you. Great to kind of hear some different views from the kind of usual parties we hear from up here. I suppose to all of our listeners, thank you for listening. And as always, you can read our blog at youthvoiceni.com, or you can catch us on Twitter at youthvoiceni, or catch us on Instagram at youthvoice_ni. As always, I've been Dermot Hamill. Thank you all for listening.